It's all yours.
Thank you for today's hearing. I come before you today in support of Assembly Bill 963 and ask for your support as well. Assembly Bill 963 is ultimately about protecting the parent-child relationship. Children are society's greatest and most valuable asset. We cherish our children and would do anything to keep them safe, happy, and prepared for the future. The family unit is the vital building block of our free society. We, the parents, have the duty to raise our families and are primarily responsible for what and how our children learn. It is not the government's job to raise our children, even if it wants to do so. Having your child's school and its employees work against you as you raise your family should not be allowed. Rather, schools should play a supporting role to the parents as we lead in raising and educating our children. Therefore, it is of utmost importance that we understand our legal rights to effectively oversee and participate in the part of our children's education that occurs outside the home, including in government schools. Allow me to provide you with some examples of issues happening in our schools. To reference item 2 in the Parent Bill of Rights, the right to determine the type of school or educational setting the child attends. We must protect our private school, charter school, and homeschool families. Parents have witnessed through the pandemic and virtual schooling that the lack of core educational building blocks across the classrooms is impacting their ability to learn. Parents are pulling their children out of the public school system, myself included, and are seeking out other alternatives. We must continue to protect these alternative paths of education. Item 5, the right to determine the names and pronouns used for the children while they are at school. For this, I will reference Germantown School District Policy 5900 relating to transgender students. This policy states, quote, when reasonable under the circumstances, the district will seek to include a student's parents or guardians in discussion with the student that relates to the student's transgender status. As a general practice, district personnel should speak with a student to obtain the student's consent prior to discussing a student's transgender status with a parent or guardian, end quote. This policy clearly gives the discretion of the school to determine if and when they will ultimately inform the parent of this practice at school. And this policy comes from Neola, who writes many of the policies that districts across the state and the Midwest have adopted. So it's not just a one school issue. This is a reckless and dangerous practice for the school to align itself as taking the moral high ground with the student and working to deceive the parent. Item 5 also pairs nicely with item 3, the right to determine medical care for the child. Some schools across the country have taken the opportunity to provide their students with puberty blockers and other hormonal therapy medications without consent of the parents. As a medical provider myself, schools should not be carelessly providing these medications to students. Schools do not have the proper knowledge and expertise as to how these medications work, their side effect profile, the short and long-term complications, and appropriate dosing. The harm that can be inflicted onto a student from the careless use of these medications can be lifelong. The decisions should be left to the student, their parents, and the primary care provider. And I would urge everyone to look into the extensive work that is done by Abigail Schreier reporting on this issue. Items 6 and 7, the right to review instructional materials and to access any education-related information. Curriculum transparency as a whole has been a main point of concern for both myself and many other parents. In my home district, we have made multiple attempts to have full curriculum transparency, but have met resistance from our superintendent and our former director of learning and teaching. Parents should not have to file endless FOIA requests to see the materials shown to their students. Likewise, schools must be accountable for the curriculum they are purchasing and implementing with stakeholder dollars. An example of this is the SEL materials purchased through Second Step and Castle. SEL programs represent a fundamental shift in the role of teachers from educator to therapist and expand the reach of government into the domains of family. Some schools may use SEL programs to assume power over students' mental health development beyond their training, expertise, or authority. This is not the role of teachers, and again, it highlights the blurring of boundaries where the school is now assuming the roles and responsibilities of the parent. Item 12, the right to engage with locally elected school board members and participate at regular school board meetings. In the Eau Claire School District, parents have been repeatedly not allowed to participate in their board meetings and denied their civic rights to participate where their children attend. We should not be denying parents access to their elected officials who make decisions in the interest of the schools and the students. If schools are not willing to engage with the constituents they represent, then who are they truly working for? And lastly, item 15, which I would like to add given some of the previous discussion. For item 15, I will reference Loudoun County, Virginia. A student was sexually assaulted in a bathroom by a male student. That crime was not reported. The school district worked to cover it up and quietly moved the assaulter to another school district where then he committed the same crime a second time. This is the reason that these crimes need to be reported, and school officials have every capability to work with local law enforcement to create guidelines and protocols as to how they will handle these situations. That is why that piece is needed in this bill. In closing, our participation in our children's education is the most critical factor in assuring school accountability under the law. This Parents' Bill of Rights provides a roadmap for parental engagement and serves as an educational resource for our participation in our children's education. Thank you.